Wer weiß, was das Wappentier von Schottland ist? Ah, hier haben welche zugehört. Sehr, sehr gut. Was ist es? Das Einhorn, sehr gut. Schottland liegt zwar in Europa, aber Schottland haben wir leider nicht hier auf die Bühne bekommen. Aber die europäische digitale Souveränität, das ist ja endlich ein bisschen mehr Priorität, so ein bisschen. Wir reden häufiger drüber. Die deutsche digitale Souveränität war schon ein Ticken länger Thema. Wir hatten jetzt im vergangenen November den großen europäischen Digitalgipfel. Wir reden wieder stärker drüber, wir reden stärker über Europa und wir wollen auch heute und hier zum Abschluss des ersten Tages über Europa sprechen. Denn die digitale Souveränität wird immer wichtiger. Wir haben es heute den ganzen Tag gehört. Die politische Situation in der Welt wird immer drastischer, immer schlimmer. Wir haben immer mehr Leute, die von amerikanischen Sanktionen bedroht sind und ihr ganz normales alltägliches Leben gar nicht mehr durchführen können. Wenn man nur daran denkt, was geht eigentlich nicht mehr, wenn die Kreditkarte nicht mehr geht. Ja? Also da ist ein Riesenthema. Ich habe manchmal das Gefühl, in der deutschen und europäischen Politik ist noch nicht so ganz angekommen, wie sehr die digitale Sphäre eigentlich Grundlage ist für unser aller Leben und wie sehr es die Grundlage ist und wie sehr wir uns damit beschäftigen sollten. Der europäische digitale Souveränitätsgipfel ist so ein bisschen ein Hoffnungsschimmer für mich gewesen und ich hoffe sehr, dass es weitergeht und wie es weitergehen kann. Das möchte ich jetzt mit meinem Panel diskutieren und dazu lade ich gerne alle 4 auf die Bühne. Ich begrüße Milen Starke, ich begrüße Peter Ganten, kommt gerne auf die Bühne, Emma Gariani und Matthias Stürmer. Herzlich willkommen und begrüßt Sie mit einem großen Applaus. Geht gerne einmal durch. Ich gehe hier an den Rand.
Okay.
And yeah, take a seat there. And because we will speak about Europe, I will switch to English now. And because we have an international panel. And as I said, we want to speak about European digital sovereignty and what we can do to strengthen it. And I'm so happy to have you all here. And I'd like to start with you, Milen Starke. You're the State Secretary and CIO and CDO of the state of Thüringen and at the Ministry of Digital Affairs and Infrastructure. And like your minister, you are from a company, from a software company. You worked in the private sector for a long time, and now you switched to a completely different sphere. And I'm very keen to get to know from you because Thüringen is like Schleswig-Holstein, one of the front runners when it comes to the open source usage and digital sovereignty. So how do you... so how do you approach digital sovereignty in the state of Thüringen and where do you stand right now?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, first of all. I'm very glad to be here today. And as you said, I'm from a business background and I switched maybe to the right side now, to the administrative side. We in Thuringia, we actually define digital sovereignty in a 3-layer process. We look at it from an infrastructure perspective, from a data perspective, and then we also look at it from an application or process perspective. And I think that's very, very important because usually when you have like a debate about digital sovereignty, it's usually black or white, but it's not. And within these 3 layers, we actually can look at it like a range, you know, and we basically want to have the bar at 100% of sovereignty. Right now, the bar is basically within these 3 layers completely differently. And as we approach it, I mean, if we look at all the company names around us, we do use Nextcloud, we do use OpenTalk, we do use OpenStack. So I think in Thuringia, we have like for the last 20 years actually like established a very good understanding of what digital sovereignty means for us. And I think it is very, very important that we have some kind of a transparency in the debate, because I mean, you talked about the European Digital Summit a few weeks back, and everybody was talking about, yeah, we have the digital sovereign cloud. And if you actually look at the components, if you actually look at the software and hardware components, usually you actually have a little question mark, because you actually have Google, you have Microsoft, and then the question actually is that really a digital sovereign application? I would say probably not. Mm-hmm. So that's what I hope we also might discuss today, what it actually means to be digital sovereign in this three-layer process.
Thank you. I just asked Mario what the political situation was in Baden-Württemberg when they implemented Schule at BW, because in Schleswig-Holstein, we just read at the press this critics from the opposition, because of course it didn't went completely smooth, the change to open source. What is the situation in your state? Does the opposition party support you on your effort to become more digital sovereign?
It's not actually the opposition we have to convince. Usually it's also the people we are working with day by day. And even our Prime Minister, Mario Vogt, is still not always convinced that open source or digital sovereignty, meaning being independent from, for example, Microsoft or Google or whatever. So it's actually every day we have to actually look at the things we have to do. And I really appreciated Jutta Horstmann's Beitrag today, because that actually looked at the way that we have to look at it. And it's something like a mindset change has to happen. And of course, it's not easy to change a running system, especially for the administration. I totally know what I'm talking about. From a business perspective, sometimes you're just thinking, oh, come on, people. You know, the phrase, I have done it always, you know, for the last, let's say, 20 years. And we have to get in the process of actually being willing to change. And that is something which I think is one of the most important things when it comes to digital sovereignty. The technological part is actually there. I mean, look at the exhibitors, right? I mean, you guys already have the technology. And I think it's usually an administrative and a structural process that has to happen in order to actually be digital sovereign.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome Emma Gariani in the round. You're a director of the Open Source and Digital Commons Division at the French Interministerial Delegation for Digital Affairs. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
Wonderful. So we, in Germany, we have the Sovereign Tech Agency. I think a lot of people here in the room know about it. And the Digital Tech Agency focuses a lot on digital infrastructure and supporting digital open source infrastructure. And you're focusing on something different in France, right? You're focusing more on the software layer. And you focus a lot about the need of the public servants they have. Can you introduce us a little bit about what you are doing in your work in France, and how you support open source technology?
Sure. So not everybody knows about DINUM, so maybe just a few words about our mission. So DINUM is responsible for the French state digital strategy conception and implementation. And our job is basically to make the state simpler, more efficient with open source. I mean, not always open source, we'll come back to this. We would prefer open source, obviously, but to make the state more efficient, more sovereign, and simpler with digital tools. So our activities are auditing, bringing expertise to ministries, and we're operating products. So we have a portfolio of, right now, I just checked, 304 open source products that enable either public agents to work. So this is our projects, for instance, La Suite about digital workplaces. We'll maybe come back to this. But also many other products that enable us to deploy public policies in the field of education, in the field of environment, in the field of the military, in the et cetera, et cetera. And we're working with a network of incubators in every ministry now, there is an incubator which is in charge of promoting this transformation inside the ministry with the help of open source, obviously, but also with the help of agile methods and everything that's in the digital transformation toolbox. So this is the big picture. And then inside we have the French OSPO, which I'm in charge of, and our job in the French OSPO is in liaison with all these actors to support the opening of source code and to support and promote the use of open source, free software, and digital commons. And right now the focus is indeed a lot on sovereignty. I would say that maybe 10 years ago it was on transparency. If you remember, everything that was about data opening, source code opening. Now the focus has shifted, and we've discussed this morning why. I think it's pretty obvious for everybody, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you. And also to you, the question about the political standing of digital sovereignty. So your president came here to Berlin in November for the Summit on Digital European Sovereignty. Yeah. Is this a priority in French politics?
I would say it's a priority at the European level, but every country has a certain conception of what digital sovereignty means. We can notice this when we are in European encounterings. So for France, it's a priority to be able to master our code base, to know what's happening in our information system. We also consider it to be sovereign that our data are not sent abroad, so that we are not submitted to extraterritoriality laws, so US laws mainly, and also that we can switch, we can be sovereign on the tools that we have and that ensure the continuity of the state's action so that we can switch if needed, from one tool to another one. So this is what we mean in France by digital sovereignty, and we are having, there are different sensibilities according to the political culture also. And this is indeed a priority, and I would say that maybe 5 years ago, this was not a priority. The context was really different, and we can really have a sense of change in this. And so digital sovereignty is indeed supported at a very, very high level now, also in the ministries, and we are a key player in this interministerial discussion at DINUM.
Thank you. So I'd like to have a look in our third country, Switzerland. Matthias Stürmer, you are from Switzerland. Happy to have you here. You're a professor at the Bern University of Applied Sciences and head of the Institute for Public Sector Transformation. And among others, you are also the president of the Swiss Open and Digital Impact Network, the plural, Open and Digital Impact Network Association, and managing director of the Parliamentary Group for Digital Sustainability. Wow. And in this position, you did a lot because you have now a legal obligation to publish publicly funded software as open source, so public money, public code, is your law now. How did you achieve such a legislation in Switzerland?
Well, first of all, thank you also for inviting Switzerland to this great event. The story about the MBAG law or MOTA law, depending on how you call it, this is very interesting because in the beginning it was actually the Swiss Federal Court which wanted to publish open source software that other courts can use it and reuse it. But then there was a company was against basically opening up, or company was actually felt competed by the government. And this is a very interesting question because I remember this was about 15 years ago, I went to FOSDEM and I explained it, this policy group, that we have this problem in Switzerland, that the company is opposed against open source because they feel endangered, their business model. And everybody else said, like, what's the problem? Because it's like a little bit exotic. Nevertheless, it actually started a process. And after many years now, 2 years ago, this new law came into force. And now all the federal government has to publish everything which they own, all the intellectual property they have on the source code, they have to publish under official open source licenses.
And also a political question to you, because Switzerland is very proud to be neutral as a country, right? And I always wonder, can you as Switzerland still be politically neutral if it's not digital sovereign? So how much was this aspect involved in the discussion to focus on open source software, that you need to have the ground to be politically neutral with digital sovereignty?
Well, neutrality in Switzerland, that's always a little bit a challenging topic, especially when I look at French or German colleagues here. I think in theory, we want to be independent in Switzerland. We are very proud to have Wilhelm Tell and freeing us from any bad guys who control us. But in reality, when you see that what happens in the day-to-day business, and here we are a complete, I would say, corporate-driven country, because there is very much, the government is very much afraid to do industry politics. They always say the market has to arrange it and the market has to see what's best. And obviously now Microsoft is best, and SAP and all the proprietary components companies, because they're very successful in marketing and lobbying. And so therefore, at the moment, I would say we're even more dependent on the proprietary software vendors than Germany or France, because it's so much into the DNA and of Swiss people that the big corporations, only they are able to manage security, and only they are user-friendly software and so on. So that's a little bit pessimistic. Nevertheless, I think right now, people are very much waking up. So I get every day at this moment, I get calls from media who want to have to talk about this whole thing about digital sovereignty, and then there are companies making events for clients, and clients are interested in digital sovereignty, things which never happened in the last 20 years, but now it's suddenly, thanks to the new US government, it's happening.
Thank you.
Peter Ganten, we already know you, but I just introduced you as in your role as CEO of Univention. You are also the chairman of the Open Source Business Alliance. And when you look with your political glasses on the German federal level, do you see also a change in the discussion on digital sovereignty and the use of open source?
That's actually a discussion we are also having inside the OSBA. And it's always half full and half empty. I mean, there has been a lot of change in some way. We have clear statements in the coalition treaty from the Minister of Digitization. Also, the Chancellor said on the French-German summit on digital sovereignty that they are going to use openDesk inside the Chancellery. A lot of federal institutions, so I'm just speaking about the federal level now, about a lot of federal institutions are very interested in finding ways to achieve digital sovereignty. And by the way, I would totally agree with your definition. I think there's not a big difference between...
Maybe not between France and Germany.
Between France and Germany regarding the definition. And on the other side, it can very well be questioned if they are fast enough, if they really put enough energy into it. There are probably here and there people in the administration which for themselves think, well, okay, that's the thing now, we have to do it, but it will go away, and let's just do something in order that we can say we did something. And but in fact use the stuff we always used. And I think it is not yet enough. It's not yet enough. The push is not strong enough yet, but there's for sure a change, and that's on the positive side.
Thank you. We heard today from Bärbel Boy how this transformation process needs to be in the focus for the people working in public administration. And Milen, you also addressed it in your first remarks. So can you explain us a little bit how you tackled this challenge, that it's not only a technical problem, but also you need to invest really in the people and in the change management, and you also need to offer the people, I think, some kind of a narrative. So how did you do it, or in your state, Milen? Maybe you.
We are still doing it. Exactly.
You're still doing it. Yeah.
I think we have to tackle the sense of urgency, right? That it's now or never, and we talk. We communicate, and one of the most important things is transparency. We actually have to tell every employee within the administration what exactly we are doing, why we are doing it, and why that is good for us.
Yeah.
And it actually sounds quite easy, but that's not easy, right? It's all about execution. As I said, right, it's not about a technological perspective, because, I mean, it's there. It's really communication, transparency, and, you know, in German we always say mitnehmen. You know, you have to take everybody and actually put them on the path. And I say that I think that is something which will, I mean, it still takes us a lot of effort, and it's right now I cannot say and within the next 3 years we're done, because it's actually a very long-term perspective we have, especially when we're also not only looking at the state level but also in the municipality level, right? Because right now that it's only starting. I mean, if we think about it on a state level, we are probably now on a good level when it comes to digital sovereignty, I mean, for Thuringia specifically. But if we look at the municipality level, then it actually is quite more challenging, because they are now just starting.
How do you approach it in France? Emma, you told me in advance that the public servants are really requested to tell you how they need the software they are using to be improved. Does it help to increase acceptance on open source software?
So France is a centralized country, as you may know. So it has disadvantages, I guess, but sometimes it has advantages. And one of them is that once our prime minister decides to generalize a tool for sovereignty reason, the sovereignty reasons that I mentioned just before, then we have an administrative paper that says this is what you need to use now, and public agents are compelled to use it. So what does it mean precisely? It means that ministries have to propose it to their public agents, and that in a very in a small time frame, public agents can only access these kind of tools through their either smartphones or computers, because everything is managed in an environment where they can access it. And so we have CHAP. So CHAP is our instant messaging app. It relies on Matrix protocol. It relies on an open source solution, and which is the community version of Element. And last July, they were so public agents were invited to actually use it, and it's not we do not encounter so much resistance, although it depends on who you are talking to, because we know for digital skills it's harder for people without digital skills. to switch. It's easier for people with a lot of diplomas, which is correlated to digital skills, to switch. So it depends where in the state precisely, but we've seen a huge increase in adoption since then. We had about 400,000 users last July. Now we are approaching 600,000 users, and it's probably going to increase again. And we have also this for Visio, which is a Visio conference tool. And the same approach is privileged. I have to precise there that it's only for the tools that really are key in times of crisis to keep exchanges without the administration, and we will not have this approach for the whole tools that public agents can use. We need to also work with an ecosystem of solutions that are open source, but that can be provided by many other suppliers.
When we talk about digital sovereignty, we talk a lot about this idealistic thing, but there's also a business case, right, Matthias? In Switzerland, you told me that you support all the open source companies who are there to provide software. What are you doing? How do you approach it in this business case way?
Well, we know since many years that there's a huge economic benefit when governments invests into open source solutions, because it's for local companies increasing their skills and so on. So there are many studies proving this on economic level. And so that's what we thought last year. We have to actually use this aspect, not the sovereignty aspect, but actually the economic and the innovation perspective to apply for funding for government. Because the situation in Switzerland, unfortunately, our government is not really, let's say, so courageous as others, and actually thinks, as I said, the market will solve the problem, but it won't, because there's this collective action problem, because many people want something, but nobody takes the lead, and so it doesn't happen. And therefore, we actually decided to make this InnoSwiss application for starting basically a Swiss Cendis. In Germany, you have the Cendis, which is obviously taking lots of the strings together and pulls things and makes great things. And the French government on itself does things, but in Switzerland, it didn't happen. And so therefore, we think, and we have these companies, we have dozens of great Swiss companies who are experienced in technology and software development. So we gathered them together, and now we actually applied for funding. And because they actually will benefit, they benefit from implementing international solutions, openDesk from Germany, or Nextcloud, and all these great open source solutions we know. But they have to be, there has to be a sufficient demand. So there's a coordination of the demand and the supply. Sometimes supply of the little companies is difficult, because the government expects like the hyperscaler thing, where you basically push a button and you have 1,000 different cloud services on your, like in a supermarket. But Switzerland is more like a bazaar, and therefore to actually coordinate these bazaar-style companies, we now started this network on Sovereign Digital Switzerland.
Feeling that unlike in Schleswig-Holstein, what Alexander introduced to us, on the federal level, we don't see the business case there when we talk about digital sovereignty. Am I right, or have I just the wrong feeling about it?
I want to make, before I answer this question, one different remark in regards to acceptance, which I think is very important. I think what you said, using the urgency to communicate that this is really needed, is very important, but it will take you only that far. And after that, it is quite simple. You need to deliver. That's it. You need. And the good news here is that the open source products, which you use, which are used in Schleswig-Holstein and other places, they are really good. You can use them to accomplish the task. But as in every migration, there are little things here and there where things look different, behave different, the button is not there, it is 3 clicks more to accomplish a certain task, and so on. I've seen this in many places. And the key here is listening and delivering solutions quickly. And this will buy you a lot of gratitude from your users. And then the infrastructure might even run into outages or whatever. They will understand this because they see and they understand that we are actually able to build the whole thing in a way they can do their work in the best possible way. And that is, we have heard that also here a couple of times, and yesterday from Dirk Schröter, that is something you cannot do with proprietary software from Microsoft or Google, because I don't know, but if you try to call Microsoft and tell them I need this feature, not possible. I guess so. Maybe it's wrong.
Maybe only when you call.
yeah. No, they wouldn't take my call. and this brings us also, of course, to the business case, because all of this is work, and I think, yes, probably we still need to communicate even clearer that the open source industry in Germany is really a big industry right now. We are not such a little thing. I have to tell this sometimes myself, because I still think we are this little thing. No. We are in OSBA, we are a mid-size lobby association, bigger compared to many other lobby associations. We have 260 member companies, very big names like the Schwarz Group, Stacked, like Ionos, like now Capgemini, and many. I stop here because then otherwise I would hear, why haven't you mentioned me? And also all the long guys we had amongst us for many years from the real open source companies, and we are producing a turnover just in Germany. These companies together produce a turnover just in Germany of a medium 2-digit billion euro turnover. And that's real business. And if we manage to make this business stronger and to let these solutions become a template also for other countries, I mentioned in the keynote this morning that we won a tender from a Canadian ministry. This will help our European industry to become successful in the world with the IT sector, which is something we have never thought of, that this could ever be possible. And that's great. And I would agree, not everybody understood it yet completely.
We are in Germany often talk about that we need a European Google, we need a European Facebook, we need a European Amazon, we need something comparable to Airbus. Emma, do you think this is the right idea? Should we invest in specific companies or business ideas as to counter the big tech from the US?
I was smiling when you were saying we need a European Google, because I think we tried. For instance, we tried in France to support Quant, and it did not work. One reason for this, I believe, is that China and the US have a homogeneous market. They all speak English, they have same rules, etc. And the Draghi report showed that it's actually not really the case everywhere, I mean, on all topics in Europe. And so we have a digital single market, but it's not 100% single market. And this market fragment, and I agree with you that also in France, we're having good national champions. good national to European champions, depending on which one we are speaking about, because we have some. I know there are some here. But the thing is that I do not think that we will win and defend our sovereignty, whether it's on the bright side of having competitiveness, bringing back value creation, bringing back jobs in the EU, because yearly we spend 264 billion euros to buy services to the US. And so we subsidize 2 million US jobs that could be in the EU. I'm not saying in France, I'm not saying in the EU. And this is what we should also remember when we're speaking about open source. There's this bright side of sovereignty that's also value creation, and you spoke about it this morning. And there's the less bright side, but still important of we have to defend ourselves because we've got new changing geopolitical context. So coming back to this, to your question, we need to solve our sovereignty issues at the level of the EU, taking into account that we're not the Chinese or the US markets. And this, I believe, we cannot copy the way they did. And open source is an amazing way to do so, because we've got national or small regional champions, we've got skills, and we've got standards. We've got good solutions like, for instance, metrics, Element are used in several European countries. And in France, DINUM has been working with the Dutch government, has been working with the German government, notably Zensis, on how can we cooperate to try to maybe co-invest in standards that we depend on, to co-invest in solutions that we depend on. And for this, we need good coordination. We need help, I guess, from also at the EC level in the framework of the upcoming open source strategy. And we need places such as this place, actually, to have discussions on how we can do. But I believe that cooperations among Europe, I mean French, German, other countries, players, whether it's government or whether it's enterprises around these standards, which I call unicorn ecosystem. So we do not need unicorns, we need unicorn ecosystem. We need ecosystems that create value around one standards and that have businesses and users, whether it's private or public sector, that actually can create value in the EU and sustain these ecosystems in the long run.
Milen, you told me in advance how important standards are also for your work. What do you expect in this regard from the European level?
I totally agree with you. I think it's not our responsibility as a state or as a country or as Europe as a whole to define specific business models, right? I mean, that's the responsibility of the IT business market. We have to define the standards so that the IT businesses can actually do their work and let the market decide what is actually the best solution. And I think that should also come from Europe, that should come from Germany. We talked about the D-stack today as well, which still there's a huge question mark how the architecture of the D-stack will actually look like, how much open source will actually be inside the D-stack. We as a state, we still don't know how it actually will look like. Even sometimes the federal level doesn't know how it will look like. So I think it's our responsibility as a state to actually go, you know, like with the little flag saying open source, sovereignty. That's what we have to do. We do not have to decide the business models. That is the responsibility of the IT and businesses that are here today. And also coming from a mid-sized German IT company, I totally know what I'm talking about. And I know we also have a lot of Thuringian companies here today, which are already on that point, actually developing the business models based on the standards we on a state level define.
I'd like.
May I add one point? I think that's really crucial to build some kind of partnership between businesses and the state. For example, there's always the discussion around open source software, how can you build a sustainable business model with it? Because everybody can copy it. And of course, we know that that copying software and then selling it to someone will lead into a catastrophe. If the state defines standards like we want to buy software which is truly open, where the vendor really can do support because they actually develop the software and they actually commit patches to the software and they know what they do and all these things, then this is a foundation on which businesses can be built, because you can compete on that. It's not just I copy it and then I offer it. And to be honest, in some cases we saw public tenders where there was just, can you deliver the software? How much turnover do you do? That's not the right way. And so I think that's a very important point. And bringing this further will help both sides really a lot. Yeah.
Matthias, before I ask you if you changed something on procurement in Switzerland, I'd like to invite you to question the panel after Matthias answered my question.
So IT procurement is a very interesting topic. I really came into the whole public procurement because of these non-bid tenders, these Freihänder, which I think are a very good metric, actually measuring the dependency of the government on certain IT vendors. And we actually just calculated the new numbers. It's in Switzerland, we have last 10 years, we spent 3.2 billion Swiss francs on foreign IT companies to actually to buy software, to buy licenses from Microsoft and so on. And so that's actually money, which is for Swiss size quite substantial, 3.2 billion. And 2 billion of this was not procured in the public market, but actually was a Freihänder with awarded directly, direct awards to the company. So there were 2 billion Swiss francs without possibility of the Swiss companies to even compete against. And I think the dimensions in Germany and France might be 10 times bigger, even because it's bigger countries. So therefore, I think if we have the possibility just to change this slightly, it's going around hundreds of millions and billions of francs and euros, which are more available for competition, for innovation, for European companies.
Thank you. Emma, you wanted to
I would like to add just a point, maybe it's specific to France, but so about this, to rebound on what you said, we have an approach that is classic, which goes through tenders, and we buy solutions to vendors, to integrators. When I say us, it's DINUM, or it can be ministries. We have interministerial tenders supporting ministries which want to buy software, so we tool them to buy. But we also have another approach, which is complementary, which is that we consider it for all sovereignty that it's very important that we can count on public agents who are tech people and who can help us internalize the skills. Because we need to know, when we're working with a company, to be sure that the work is done correctly. And also because we have this maker approach with our incubators. It's been 10 years now it started, so it's really like a very big community within the state that is developing digital public services, actually based on mostly open source components, and we need also to have the skills inside the state. We need to be able to master the code base, and this is not a question of make or buy. This is a question of knowing the stack that you're using, having the experts at your disposal internally to make sure that the work is done correctly, whether it's in the ministries done by others or also outside of the state.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask the audience, are there any questions? And if you feel more comfortable, you can also ask your question in German. Emma understands German very well. You need always some minutes, right? Until the questions are popping up. So I give you some more minutes. There's a question. Great. May you introduce yourself first?
Absolutely, yeah. My name is Joe Lorenz, or Jörg Lorenz from ITS from Germany. I wonder what politics is actually evaluating in terms of lighthouse projects, because what we saw is that open source is basically all on trust. If you have built a solution which is working somewhere, it's going to be trustworthy, and then others are going to copy it. And I think that's a little bit of reasoning inside politics to say, okay, we are going to fuel that kind of initial spark. And then trust goes off, and then we are going to get that movement. So that's a question for politics.
We are actually trying to do that. There is a group of all of the state CIOs, which is called the IT Planungsrat. And this is actually the instance where these lighthouse projects are presented and then hopefully picked up by other states as well. And that is also the group of people who basically also hopefully define also the standards that are not only on a state level mandatory, but also actually for all states mandatory. So we are trying that, but it's like I said, right? It's still something like acceptance and actually knowing that it has to be done this way.
Matthias, want to add something?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, or actually aspect in open source. We don't have a marketing department. So every real company has marketing. Even the small companies, they have marketing departments, but for open source, there's very little visibility for itself. And so that's where I think is one of the reasons why people are skeptical against open source, because they don't know about the successful use of Nextcloud in this department. And Frank told us today very nice success stories. But whoever was not here, the person didn't hear it. And I think that's one of my motivation to start this open source directory, a platform where we show these success stories of open source, where companies and also clients are able to publish their successful use of Nubus or Nextcloud or OpenCloud or whatever we have, and to show how many users are using it and how they migrated. And I think we should really make this more visible, more tangible, so that others are more confident, and that this problem of nobody has been fired for buying Microsoft is actually addressed, because this is still for decision makers a very delicate decision. Go to an open source solution where only a few people or a few successful stories are available, or to go with the mainstream and do whatever Gartner is telling you to do. And so therefore, I think we should make open source success stories more visible.
Definitely.
Maybe just to add on this, I really agree. And in my team, I hired a person who's an open source enthusiast and someone who knows about marketing. And this is why did I do? And I believe that open source communities, and it's really the case in the French state, we have a network of about 1,000 public agents who are open source enthusiasts. In all ministries, it's about 1,000 persons, but they are tech people. And sometimes they're not the buyers. I mean, the buyers are not always tech people. They can be just people who have learned public policies, and they don't know so much about open source. They don't even know it exists. They just want to have state-of-the-art tool. As you said, security, open source, what is the phone number? and they want security. And I think one thing that is really important is to work on our storytelling. Yeah. So we do it in the French state. We try to train people to do the same thing as an OSPO, to promote use cases, also to have a visibility for open source solutions that are in the state, used in the state. It's really important. But I think that we really need to work this in conjunction with civil society, whether it's private sector, whether it's NGOs. We really need to articulate this storytelling to be good at marketing, because in the end, the people that we will have to convince, it's not tech people, not so much. Yeah. I mean, they know about it. What the persons that we have to convince are decision makers, administrative decision makers, political decision makers, and for this, I think we don't need the specs, we don't need the license. It's super important, we do know that, but we need storytelling.
Yeah, thank you. Any more questions? There is one. May you introduce yourself too?
Of course.
Thank
Hi,
you.
my name is Christian from Pacifico. And today we have been talking about digital sovereignty, and we always have been talking about software. Is there any thought about the hardware level? I mean, it's super awesome if my software stack is open source, but if my Qualcomm ARM processor is talking to San Francisco, it's still talking to San Francisco. So is there any thought about this?
I think Milen has some thoughts.
Yes, exactly. Totally good point, because we actually have to look at the entire value chain of the IT infrastructure, like I said, data usage and applications. And I think that is also something we have to tap on when it comes to the EU, right? We have the EU Chip Act, which now actually has to become, I mean, like workable. It actually has to, be realized. And I also think we have to do some funding for hardware companies in Europe, and I think that is also something that we saw in on the French-German summit, where a lot of hardware companies also came together and actually decided, okay, how do we actually want to produce the basis for the applications in the future. So I think that is also a responsibility of the EU to basically facilitate the production of the hardware in Europe, totally.
And then it's also creating the market, I mean, demand. We need both. We need probably some help for companies to do that, but we need also then in procurement that the hardware we are going to buy will fulfill certain criteria, so that again it becomes attractive for businesses to do this. And here we are speaking about a lot more of investments to be done than with software. It's really a big thing.
Completely, and then it also comes again back to the topic of standardization, because if we actually standardize, saying that on a federal or even on a European level, we only allow technology, Jesus Christ, technology that is produced and made in Germany or made in Europe, then there's no question to be asked anymore.
But is it realistic when we talk about chips?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. For example, in Thuringia, we actually have a very globally known production company. And I think 90% of all of our smartphones actually have these little chips from Thuringia already inside. And I think that is also an industry we basically, like I said, we have to facilitate.
Yes.
Maybe just one thought. I fully agree that we should also have own hardware production, but I think it's just harder to get hardware because it has much more investment, obviously, and I think it's the big difference is also when you buy a chip, you actually own it. You own, well, of course we can agree on firmware and everything, absolutely, and we don't know the details, everything. But from a, let's say, materialistic point of view, we own the hardware, we own the server, and nobody else can actually, well, should actually be able to access the server. Whereas with the software and with this sovereign cloud thing from the hyperscaler, even if you have your AWS or Google Cloud in your cellar, they still need updates, obviously. All the software need updates all the time, and you don't own the software, you only have a license. And so that's, I think, is a big difference. So whenever people, well, sometimes in Switzerland, people say, well, we don't have to start working on digital sovereignty because we will never be sovereign. We cannot build chip factories in Switzerland anyway. we should say, well, okay, we won't maybe build chip factory manufacturers in Switzerland, but we can use open source software to actually control the software part of it. So that's just not to stop, let us stop us with not being able to build right away the big manufacturers.
So DINUM is not really dealing with this part of we stick to the software layer, but you mentioned risk V, and this is typically a unicorn ecosystem, because you have an open chip architecture ecosystem that can be global, and this is where sovereignty can be open, and I insist on this, and we have champions from Germany that can emerge through the support of either the EC or from the German investment, public investment or private investment capacities. We can have that also in France, and we can build a strength at the EU level around this open ecosystem, around this risk-V unicorn to generate business, to generate sustainability. And risk-V back in 2018, it was 50 million euros. Now it's above 1 billion euros every year business. So we can really grow European skills and capacity with this kind of within free and fair market competition at the EU level.
Thank you. I would like to end this panel with a question to you all regarding the European Union or European level, as you're not a part of the EU, but you can also address your wishes, because I would like to know from you if you could change or strengthen one thing at the European or EU level tomorrow, be it regulation, procurement, funding, governance, or something else, what would make the biggest difference for European digital sovereignty?
Ladies first, I would say.
So I can.
Such a gentleman.
I can start. Thank you for your politeness. I will take the
That's
words.
why we don't have you in the EU.
If I may, I think European would be my answer. I know that, I mean, when we're working in the French administration, whether you are working in Germany, in Bremen, on your own business or elsewhere, we're on to operational activities, we have businesses, we have objectives, and sometimes we lose sight for the bigger picture. And I think that what's happening now, planets are aligning, and there's a wake-up call for the EU. And I think we are, I mean, someone said this morning that we needed to be courageous, that we needed to be bold, and let's be bold at the EU level, and let's try to foster cooperation. I'm sure that we can, and I'm sure that it will be good for our sovereignty and also for our good business and prosperity at the EU level.
Totally right. And I would actually say, let's think about it as serenity by design and not serenity by press release. Because I felt like the summit we talked about today a few weeks back was actually a lot of press releases, a lot of, oh yeah, let's go. But at the end, what actually happened? And I think that is something we have to realize. Let's not just talk about it, let's actually do it. So let's do it by design and not for the press release.
Thank you. Peter.
I think it's not that complicated. We should have a policy on the EU level to only buy open source software. Simply that. And yeah. And that's, of course, that's not possible tomorrow, but it's similar like with electric cars or stuff. You can set up a policy and say, this, the EU administration, and we encourage member states too, will not buy any proprietary software in 2035, for example, and that will change markets a lot. Because business will change then, business will adapt, and that will give us a lot of a lot of digital sovereignty. There's also still this where is it operated, and we need to take care for that too. But I think that is at the core, and that would help a lot, and it's just one sentence.
So your wish for the European Union is become more like Switzerland in this regard?
When I listen to Matthias, I'm not sure. It's not just writing the sentence, it's actually
it's a bit more work,
doing
right?
it, yes.
Yeah. So what is your wish?
No, I had enough time. Thank you very much. So one thing I think we didn't talk too much today, but I think it's very important to really address also kind of the elephant in the room about the free rider and the business model aspects, because there are great companies producing great software, great open source software, and governments actually willing to pay something, but sometimes it doesn't match. And so I think for my wish, it would be to really look at government or public sector or client in general and the open source producing side to find ways on how to fruitfully and prosperous for everybody to go into the future, because I think we need governments who are strongly focusing on open source. Let's buy open source, I agree, and really do this. And then collaboration is important, Switzerland with everybody else. Thank you very much for accepting us. And nevertheless, I think that the innovation stems from the industry, from the companies, from the innovators, from the communities. And here it has to find, well, we have to improve the kind of way to collaborate. We have subscriptions at the moment where governments pay for subscriptions, but what is behind the subscription? It's difficult to communicate because subscription doesn't force you to, you're not forced to buy a subscription because you can get it for free. And so we have to learn, and especially public sector has to learn why it has to invest money into open source innovation.
Thank you. A big applause for my panel. Thank you, Milen Starke, Emma Gariani, Peter Ganten und Matthias Stürmer.